I like to think of myself not as really what I do for a living, but kind of what I do in my spare time. And so I had a real hard time trying to figure out a career, because I'm not the type of guy that says, well, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a, marine architect. That's who I am, and that's what I do. I've always thought of myself more as a skateboarder, mountain bike, and wakeboard, or whatever. So when I first started into careers, I started off Busch Gardens, then I ran pet stores for a while. Got into hotel management and kind of ran the front desk and did some leadership there, and then moved over to bellhop, which was probably the most fun thing other than bartending that I did. Being a bellhop was a lot of fun, and it was good money. I got to meet a lot of good people. Moved away from there and got into the Boy Scouts, where I moved down to Georgia right out of college, and was the district executive for 4 counties down there, and so there was hundreds of volunteers and a large geographic area, and so I got into doing that, and I enjoyed Boy Scouts, although I was a little too Boy Scouty for the Boy Scouts. The exec there was very corrupt and was doing a lot of really bad stuff, and so I left the Boy Scouts because they didn't have good character, or at least their leadership guy did not, and I moved over to McDonald's and started working for my uncle's organization, which at the time he had, I think, about 14 McDonald's, and so I got into worked my way up there. Basically started out as a restaurant manager, worked all the way up into the administrative office, because they figured out I kind of had some skill on some other stuff, and so started developing basic Excel tools for them to do everything from scheduling to truck order and analysis of the metrics that they wanted to track. Got to go and represent him on the owner-operators meetings and do some of the fun high-level stuff that you get to do when you're a big company. And kind of play that guy, the PR right-hand man to the boss. That was a lot of fun. And then right after there, actually, it was about while I was still at McDonald's working in the corporate office, I also bartended and managed a bar on the side. And this place was like Cheers, where everybody knows your name, And so that was probably had the time of my life, although for most people that are bartenders, it can be very destructive, and I fully participated in bartender life. And so I was kind of glad I got in and out of that pretty quickly before I got hurt or hurt anybody else. But it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about restaurant management, inventory control, and food cost, and a lot of the things that you learn as a restaurant manager. So then my mom called and had to basically turn it all off and come up here and learn a new job. Well, luckily I worked for a lot of companies where I had some experience working, basically trying to make the place break even or improve itself in systems and processes. When it comes down to kind of the things I learned the most about is probably McDonald's had an excellent training program. I know a lot of people joke around at working at McDonald's, but if you want to be a CEO someday, go through the McDonald's management training. I mean, I didn't make it all the way to Hamburger University, but just the training I did learn, both from the internal organization working for my uncle and both the McDonald's corporate office, was amazing. Those people have their act together. And if the human services field had 1/100th of the capability that McDonald's had when it came down to their systems and processes, it would revolutionize our field. Working in the restaurant industry, also when I managed the bar and grill, the owner was absent. He liked to come by and basically pick up the deposit and say, "How's it going?" And I'd say, "Fine." And after a while, he said, "Well, just call me if you need me or if you have any questions." And then after, I think, about a month, he called and said, "Hey, I hadn't talked to you in a while." And I said, "Well, I haven't needed you, and everything's going pretty good, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's going great. It'd be nice if you checked in every once in a while." I was like, "Okay, how often would you like me to check in with you?" But basically, I just took the ball and ran with it, and I did a lot of studying and just kind of figured it out. And so it felt like I was the owner of that bar, and it was growing every day, and the customers were happier and happier, and there was less and less roaches and all of the cool things. You implement something and then you see the success, and so I think that's when it really got into my mind. It's like I like running companies. I like or being in charge of something, and it doesn't matter if I own it or not, but just being in charge of something where I can make a change and I can see the outcome and have that control. So those are probably the two main experiences. The Boy Scouts did also have a lot of really, really good leadership, team building type experience that I got from them. And in all the organizations, I did try to really learn from the other leaders that I respected and that did well, and try to learn not to do the things that the leaders that did not do well, and really learn from their mistakes as well as their successes. Probably the biggest was my uncle Gary Dodd. He's passed away now, but he ran multiple companies, including the McDonald's, and that guy knew more about business and real estate and economies and leadership. I mean, there almost wasn't anything he didn't know. There's also no mistake he had made. And so I used to go down there every single year. After I moved up here, I went down there every single year for Christmas and tried to spend a week with him. And just little conversations over a couple cheap Natty Light beers, I would learn more about things that I could do to improve support services than I could do in weeks of training. So he was always somebody that was kind of an inspiration for me. And the one main thing I think, and I've kind of shared this, or I stole it from him, which that's okay to do, right? I asked him one time, I was like, why do you do it? Why do you run the companies? Or what's your goal? You know, is it money? Is it to do burgers, or et cetera? And he answered something I wasn't expecting, and he said, I just want to be the best employer I can. And I was like, that's kind of weird. And at the time I was pretty young, I was in my 20s. So just for him to say that, I was like, wow, I got to kind of recalibrate everything I thought about business. And so it's kind of funny, because when I had the opportunity at Support Services to take over as CEO and president, we basically, Andy and I kind of came to the understanding that that's what we wanted to do too, is provide the best supports possible to the customers, but also really take care of the employees that choose to live their careers with us and not go somewhere else. First, I had to learn how to get up early in the morning. Luckily, when I was working at McDonald's, I could kind of work my own hours and work remotely a lot. And then bartending, we opened at 5, and then didn't close usually until the last customer was done, regardless of what the law said we were supposed to shut down. So I did have to, especially the first week when I moved up here, I definitely had to learn how to get up in the morning and get started early. But all joking aside, I had to do the self-study thing a lot. It was one of those, we had a really good team, and that team knew a lot about human services, and they knew a lot about the way my mom had done it. Although my mom was a standard matriarchal business owner, where she was the answer to everything. So she didn't empower people as much back then, because she was 30 years in the field, had worked for many companies, and she did really kind of know it all. She was other people's inspiration versus her being inspired by others. And so when she passed, I realized I'm this young guy. I need to look at everybody around me and figure out who has the skills and capabilities and the talents, and let them be the expert on that. And so I needed to find out, what is my role going to be, and what are the things I need to do, and the things I need to learn to make sure that this company makes it. And so we've had our ups and downs, but the self-study on how other companies operate was the one thing I really had to focus on back in '05. It's one thing I'm pretty good at, is playing hard just as much as I work hard. I pretty much keep doing all of the sports that I did even when I was back as a kid. So I've pretty much kept skateboarding in and out of my life, all the way up until you get hurt, and then you just have to try again and get back on the horse. I've been wakeboarding ever since I was I guess I started back in high school, probably about the age of 15. And so I try to wakeboard, especially in the summertime, once or twice a week if possible. Rock climbing is a new thing that I've taken to a whole nother level. Back in the day, I used to run the high ropes course for the Boy Scout camp, and so I just love heights and climbing. And then all of a sudden we got into climbing real rocks and going out in the middle of nowhere and setting up our own ropes and lead climbing, and I found out that's something I'm a lot more passionate about than I thought. So I do a lot of rock climbing, which also brings in camping and biking and everything else. Big mountain biker. I've been mountain biking since I was a kid, and I keep doing that even to this day. I love tech and just following tech stuff. Sometimes it's related to the company, but also just tech things in general, because I think it's really changed the world in my lifetime, and I think it's going to change it 3 or 4 more times in my lifetime to come. So I do try to follow tech as much as I can. Photography has always been something I've done. Started shooting weddings back when I was a kid. Actually, I think I was 17, 18 years old. Started to shoot weddings, and I ended up with my own company shooting weddings there for a while, and it basically paid me to get through college. Let's see. I guess just being outdoors, kayaking, just anything that gets you outdoors, hanging out with friends, enjoying peace and quiet, and not thinking about work. But then, as soon as you get done, you got to start thinking work again. And so the minute I can't be outside doing stuff, I usually find myself doing something related to work, regardless if it's what I'm studying or just trying to better myself as a person.